Okay, this is 5.1, and 5.1 deals with units for capacity. It's a unit of measurement that deals with the amount that a container can hold. Now, there's special units for capacity. Okay, and you've heard these units before. For example, when you're filling up a gas tank at the gas station, you're filling it up in liters. If you're in the United States, you're filling it up in gallons. Okay, so the units in Imperial are ounces, cups, pints, quarts, and gallons. If we're talking about metric system, we're talking about liters and milliliters. Okay, so those are units of capacity. So let's just do some practice here. This is, you'll notice this from getting started, from the unit before, 1/3 times 12. Well, we can do it two ways. We can take 1 divided by 3, get an answer for that on our calculator, then multiply it by 12. Or we can just take 1 times 12 is 12, divide that number by 3, and we get an answer of 4. Either way, we get the same answer. 1 divided by 2, well, that's just the same as 1. And that line is divided by 1 divided by 2 is the same as 1/2, which is just equal to 0.5. Okay, you shouldn't have to use your calculator for that. Okay, so we're going to be talking about capacity. At a marina, Joe measures oil and gas for outboard motors using imperial units. Okay, so the capacity units we're going to be talking about right now is in imperial. How are these units for capacity related? Okay, so we've got two different systems here. Within the imperial system, we've got the American and the British. Here in Canada, we use the British. Okay, that's why you'll notice that our gallon is a little bit larger than an American gallon, and you're going to find out why later on in the chapter. So, a fluid ounce. What is a fluid ounce? Well, that's equivalent to 2 tablespoons. Okay, so you've probably all baked before, and you know what a tablespoon is. So 1 ounce is equivalent to 2 tablespoons. And in the British system, it's also the same, 2 tablespoons. But here's where it starts to differ. 1 cup is 8 fluid ounces, where in the British system, 1 cup is 10 fluid ounces. Okay? So a pint. 1 pint is just 2 cups. Okay, if 1 cup is 8 ounces, 2 cups must be 8 times 2 is 16. But if 1 cup in the British system is 10 ounces, then 1 pint in the British system must be 10 times 2 is 20 fluid ounces. Okay, now if 1 quart is 2 pints, and 1 pint is 2 cups, or 16, 2 pints must be 2 times 16 is 32 fluid ounces. And if 1 quart is 2 pints and 1 pint is 2 cups and 2 cups is 20 ounces, well then 2 pints must be 2 times 20 is 40 fluid ounces. Can you see how it's starting to differ now? Now, 1 gallon is 4 quarts. Okay, 4 quarts, well, 1 quart is 2 pints, and 1 pint is 2 cups, so 4 quarts must be 4 times 32, which is 128 fluid ounces in the American system. In the British system, 1 gallon is 4 quarts. We know 1 quart is 2 pints, or 40 fluid ounces, so 4 times 40 is 160 fluid ounces. So you can see that there's a little bit of a difference between the British or the UK Imperial and the American Imperial. Okay? For these calculations here, we're going to use the American system, the US system. So, how many pints are in a gallon? Well, we know that 1 quart is equal to 2 pints, and 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. So, if we have 2 pints per quart times 4 quarts in 1 gallon, we must have 4 times 2 is 8 pints in 1 gallon. Okay? If you want to know what the size of a pint is, it's one of your chocolate. Pint is about the equivalent of one of your chocolate milk containers, okay, that you get at lunch in the cafeteria. Okay, that's about the equivalent of a pint. Okay, so 1 gallon we can say is 8 pints, so 1 pint is equal to 1/8 of a gallon. Okay, 1 gallon is 8 pints, so 1 pint is just 1/8 of a gallon. That's the relationship between those numbers. Okay, so reflecting, how are the British and American imperial units different for capacity? Well, they're different because the British uses slightly more units. Okay, same units, that's how they're the same, but there's just a little bit more. Okay, for example, it changes right up here when we start talking about cups. 1 cup is 10 ounces, 1 cup is 8 ounces, and that's the big change. And then that change just carries on all the way through as we get to the larger units. Okay, so let's do example number 1. Evan is making punch for hospital volunteers. He needs 3.5 quarts of cranapple juice. How many cups is this? Okay, well, let's work it out. Here's the solution. How many cups are in a quart? Well, 2 cups is equal to 1 pint, and 1 pint is equal to, 2 pints is equal to 1 quart. So if we have 2 cups per pint times 2 pints per quart, that means in 1 quart we must have 2 times 2, which is 4 cups in 1 quart. Okay, again, we're using the American system. Okay, the American units. So how many cups are in 3.5 quarts? We have 4 cups in 1 quart. Okay, so if we have 3.5 quarts, because that's what the question says, we have 3.5 quarts of cranapple juice. How many cups is that? We have 3.5 quarts times 4 cups per quart. Well, we can just take that number 3.5 or 3.5, multiply it by 4, and that's going to give us our answer. Or we can break it down like this. We've got 3 whole cups, so we have 3 times 4 is 12 cups, and we have half a quart times 4 cups gives us half times 4, or 0.5 times 4 is 2 cups. So we end up with 12 plus 2 is equal to 14. Okay, so we have 14 cups of cranapple juice. And that's the long way of doing it. The best way to do it would be just to take your calculator, and I'll turn it on, clear it. And if I have 3.5 quarts times 4 cups per quart, that's just 3.5 times 4 equals, and I get 14. Okay, that's the fastest way of doing it. It's just that the book decided to break it down into small little chunks. Okay, either way is correct. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about another unit of capacity. It's called the bushel. Okay, and that's a farming term because that tells us how much grain, the capacity of grain in when it's sold. Okay, grain is sold by the bushel. Okay, so we just need to know how big a bushel is. Well, it says here 1 bushel is a unit for dry measure, and 1 bushel is equivalent to 8 gallons. Okay, so Lars bought a bushel of oats for his horses. If he uses 1 pint of oats each day to feed them, how many days will the oats last? Well, the solution is 1 gallon is equal to how many quarts? So we know 1 gallon is the same as 4 quarts, and 1 quart is the same as 2 pints. So 1 gallon is equal to 4 times 2 is 8 pints. We know that. That was in the previous question. Okay, so 1 bushel is equal to 8 gallons. So 1 bushel is equal to 8 gallons times 8 pints per gallon. Okay, that's where we got this number from, 8 pints per gallon, or 8 times 8 is 64 pints. So 1 bushel of oats will last 64 days. Okay, so if he buys a bushel of oats for his horse, he can feed that horse for 64 days, or just roughly over 2 months. Okay, all right, so that's all there is for 5.1. Go ahead and do the practice and see how you do there.